Welcome to the start of a new journey, this time in Eastern Europe, beginning here in Budapest, the delightful capital of Hungary. As you may know, Budapest, back in the day, was two cities divided by the beautiful Danube River, with Buda on the west bank and Pest, as native Hungarians pronounce it, on the east side of the river. I'm staying here on the Pest side of the river in a leafy neighborhood of old homes and apartment buildings full of old world European charm, and just a short metro hop from the city center. The metro line that stops a block from my guest house, the M1 line, is not just any subway. Check this out. This line has been around since 1896, and it's the world's oldest electrified underground rail system, and it's the second oldest multi-station subway of any kind, period, after the London Underground. The rest of Budapest metro system is super modern and state-of-the-art, but when you get to a station like those on the M1 line, it's like stepping into a living transportation museum. The humongous Gothic Revival building you see here is Hungary's Parliament building, the largest building in Hungary and one of the largest governmental structures in the world. It's a spectacular edifice that's home to the National Congress, which has been unicameral since World War II and only uses a small portion of it. When the place was built in time to be inaugurated in 1896, on the alleged 1000th anniversary of Hungary, the thinking, I guess, was go big or go home. And it was inaugurated in 1896, but the building wasn't actually finished until 1902. This building is so huge, it's almost impossible to see it in its entirety from up close. If you want to view it in its entirety from the outside, it's best to go across to the other side of the Danube.
As pleasant as it appears today, the handsome plaza in front of Parliament hides bitter scars from Hungary's recent past. It was here in 1956 that the Soviet-backed government called out tanks against protesters in a bloody massacre that quelled revolution against the then communist regime. An underground memorial and museum commemorates victims of that infamous day.
Even today, no one knows exactly how many people were massacred on that day, but the estimates go up to 1,000.
On the Danube side of the building, another memorial for another atrocity.
You can see along the banks of the Danube what appear to be a long row of shoes, and they are. They're sculpted from cast iron, made in lifelike sizes from the 1940s. They are a memorial to the Jews who were slaughtered during the waning days of World War II. There are 60 pairs of these shoes, and they mark the spot where Jews, men, women, and children were herded, ordered to take off their shoes at the banks of the river, and then they were summarily shot and their bodies dumped into the river below. to get from Pest to the Buda side of Budapest and vice versa. There's no better way to do it than to walk across one of the city's beautiful old bridges over the Danube. And that's what I'm doing on Hungary's oldest bridge over this river, the Széchenyi Chain Bridge. This bridge opened in 1849, and at the time its center span of some 663 feet was one of the longest in the world. It was largely rebuilt after World War II, and that's because the retreating German Nazis blew it up during the Battle of Budapest near the end of the war, leaving little more than the towers. Thankfully, the large sculpted lions that you see at the entry on both ends of the bridge were not affected by the bombing. By the way, if you're wondering what a chain bridge is, it's just a reference to a way suspension bridges used to be built with chains to hold their weight, as opposed to the later practice of stringing them with wire ropes. Well, it is the next day, and I did not spend the night on this bridge. Yesterday, when I was here, I wanted to be on the bridge and see the bridge, but I was headed to Castle Hill on the other side of the river, on the Buda side, for a specific reason, to see some of the great landmarks there. But when I got to the funicular on the Buda side of the bridge, there was such a long line, not to mention a rock concert that was warming up, which had increased the crowd, that I decided to call it quits on that and come back today. And so here I am. It is a gorgeous, sunny Budapest morning, and I see the funicular from here. The only question is, what will the line be like? Well, this is what I'm talking about. No line at all. Much better.
Okay, no surprise here. You have two choices to get up Castle Hill: walk or take the funicular. I've opted for the latter. More on that in a bit. I'll just say the view is splendid.
You have yourself a nice trip.
Oh, you guys too. Have a wonderful day. Maybe I'll see you around up there. Well, as you can tell, I've arrived at the top of the funicular.
Frank Sinister, my way, for you. I arranged it, that cost me €10,000.
My newfound friends from the UK are telling me that they're playing My Way just for me. I don't think so, but it's a nice thought. There's no king or queen of Hungary anymore, of course, but there is Sandor Palace, as it's called, inside the castle complex. Today, it's the official residence of Hungary's president.
Hungary's most powerful politician, the authoritarian-leaning Prime Minister Viktor Orban, lives elsewhere, and I'm going to guess doesn't have to suffer tourists outside his door.
This is really a lovely place, and if you come to Budapest, you must come to Castle Hill. But if it's your first time in Budapest, you may be a bit surprised in that it's not purely what you might expect. This complex is set within the old city of Buda, and so mingled among these historic structures are regular streets. They're streets that have stores, shops, just what you would expect of a city, albeit a rather quiet and special place because of its precise location. If there's one thing that I would say is a bit regretful, is that Everything here has been monetized to the max. For one thing, it costs 4,000 forints. I'm doing a quick calculation, that's $11 to ride the funicular. You don't get the choice of riding up and walking back down. They sell only round-trip tickets. At some of the sites here, well, all of them really, to go inside is a separate ticket cost. Even Fisherman's Bastion, which is a lovely place, and you can go there and pay nothing and look off the edge and get one of the better views in town. It too is heavily monetized, with the powers that be having sold away to concessionaires the most choice spots. The original walls of this bastion went up in the 1700s as part of one of Buda Castle's several rebuilds since it was first constructed in the year 1265. The name derives from a time when it is said that guild fishermen who made their living along the banks below took responsibility for helping protect this part of the fortifications around the royal palace. Those beautiful bell chimes come to us from the Matthias Church. You got to love this building for its survival story alone. During the war, the Germans used the crypt as their camp kitchen. It was heavily damaged by bombs during the final siege of Budapest. And after the city fell, the Soviets used it as a stable for their horses.
These days you can admire the outside for free, pay about $7 US to go inside, and $8 more to visit the tower.
No one can argue that this sprawling castle isn't impressive, but if you were expecting the kind of architecture that might suggest the 13th century when the castle was first built, well, that's mostly not what you get here. This castle has been destroyed and rebuilt to some extent at least 3 times over the centuries. The last time during the long communist era that followed World War II, hence the kind of heaviness that you sense here. So that you know, if you want to come here and tour the inside of this palace, what you'll find is the Budapest National Gallery, the National Library, and the Budapest Historical Museum. After the war, there were 2 things going on here at the same time. There was new excavation and restoration. And as you would expect, decisions about each fit into a political context. For example, the pro-Soviet government of the time decided to largely gut the interior of the palace, even parts of it that had suffered little or no damage, and rebuild with less grandiose motifs that were more appealing to the communist regime at the time. In my opinion, the best view of Budapest, the Pest portion from across the river, it's not from Fisherman's Bastion, but it's from the promenade in front of the former palace.
If there's one thing I know already about Budapest, it's that this is one beautiful city. And not just in the picture window, here's what you can see since. Budapest is what we like to call livable. In the next video from here, I'll show you what I mean.